Okay, so we're live. Live. This is great. There's more people now, I think. Oh, lovely. You know, I because of my training, I've typically given courses, kind of theoretical courses, which you will face. The algorithms and data structures and the language and logic, and those are the courses which tend to be the least popular ones because they're kind of from an abstraction perspective, they are the hardest, I think, computer science courses, right? And they are the ones that have the most math, right? And these days, I don't know what's going on in regular schools today, but you know, the general math knowledge of people entering this kind of education programs at the university, I can tell you, it has dropped so much in the past 20 years. And we can blame the social democrats or whatever who kind of semi-deregulated school system, right? Anyway, so it's a pleasure to have so many people. That's what I'm trying to say, really. It's so rare for me to have this many interested sponges sitting in front of me. So we'll continue, and towards the end of this lecture, we'll talk more about if there are questions about the project and that kind of stuff to prepare for the future. So there are. This one we did. We did the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the team. And so the next framework, part of the framework here is the ceremonies. Ceremony is just a fancy word for meetings. Right? I don't know why they call it ceremonies, maybe to avoid the word meeting, which has a really negative connotation for most people. Meetings. As soon as you start a regular job, when you hear that you need to be in a meeting, it's not, you don't want to go to a meeting. It's just too many meetings, just sitting there listening and nothing is happening. But so maybe that's why they use this nomenclature instead. So there are 4 different ceremonies: the sprint planning meeting, the sprint review meeting, the retrospective, and a daily Scrum meeting. I'll just, yeah, like that. So the sprint planning meeting, what happens? The input to this meeting is team has a certain capacity, which is kind of based on their past productivity, right? So they have some idea what they are capable of pulling off in one iteration. There's a product backlog, right? Which is prioritized prior to every sprint planning meeting, so that the team can look at that list and know that these are the most important things that the product owner wants us to do. Business conditions might have changed since the last sprint meeting. The state of the current product and what technology you have at your disposal. And so prior to the meeting, as I said, the product backlog, the stories, the features are prioritized by the product owner. So what happens in the sprint planning meeting is that the team looks at this product backlog, right? They look at these stories, talk to the product owner. The product owner is in this meeting. Talk to the product owner about them to make sure that they understand what it is that the product owner wants to accomplish with this particular feature, right? Once they understand kind of the top features on the product, the candidates, so to speak, right? Then they forget about the sprint goal, really. They pick these features in order of priority, if feasible. There are exceptions. And take each feature and try to figure out, the team collectively decides what needs to be done by us, the team, in order to deliver this feature, to add this feature to the product as requested by the product owner Who is the proxy for the customer, right? So it might be that you need to modify the UI. You might need to add some UI control. You might need to add some middleware classes. You might need to add some test cases, whatever it is. These are the technical things associated with a feature, and we'll see examples of this. And these technical tasks end up on something called the sprint backlog. And the team then, this is a little bit complicated, it's kind of trying to estimate how long is this going to take us. I think we'll get to that, the estimation and planning. So essentially, if we forget about this, you don't need to worry about that. The output of the sprint planning meeting is a sprint backlog. It's a bunch of tasks that you're going to do in the next iteration. So again, the team selects user stories from the product backlog, and tasks are identified in order to pull off these user stories. Tasks cannot be too big. Cannot be bigger than, we're gonna have a cap here on 8 hours for one task. So if you think about it, this is a part-time course. You're expected to spend 20 hours a week on this course. Say that 5 hours go away for a couple of meetings and admin kind of stuff, right? So you have like 15 hours left, right? If you were to take on a task here that's 16 hours, if you fail at that task, we're not going to know until the end of the sprint that you fail, and so everything turns to, you know what. Right? So small tasks. The smaller, the better. Right? If it's too big, divide it up into two. This has to do with being able to track how things are going. Determining which task to be done and how big each task is a collaborative effort. Scrum Master is really just there to ensure that the process is being followed. Scrum Master, I mean, of course, sometimes you can have very technical Scrum Masters, so they might be able to provide some input that helps the team, but in general, don't expect anything technical from the Scrum Master. It's up to the team. You talk about it to see, well, you know, might say, well, you know, I think this is really difficult. It's going to take me 8 hours. And somebody else on the team says, what are you talking about? All you need to do is this and this and that. And the first guy says, oh, you know what? I didn't think about that. You're right. It's only 2 hours. It's not 8 hours. Right? So this collaborative discussion about it increases the quality of your estimates significantly. And we'll get to that too. And you might do some high-level design also at the sprint planning meeting. You might kind of decide that, you know, are we going to use a database to persist this kind of data, or are we going to just store them in the file system, for example? This might be decided at that meeting. Not exactly how to do it, but high level how you're going to do it. This is an example of this is a poor user story. This is a poor user story, but it's yet a user story. As a vacation planner, I want to see photos of the hotels, right? This probably has something to do with some travel agency business or something. And so the product owner is formulating his or her requirement, this feature he or she wants, as this. As a vacation planner, so that you know who is interested in this feature. And you know what they want. They want to see photos of the hotels. And this user story, so this came from the product backlog. The team said that, you know, we can do this one in this iteration. So they take it off of the product backlog, puts it into the sprint backlog, and then when you look at this and look at the technology that you have, the team decides that, okay, we need to code some middle-tier stuff, and that's about 8 hours. Code a user interface, about 4 hours. These estimates, by the way, are just estimates. They're the best possible estimates you can do, given what you know. But we're not going to allow you to spend more time analyzing so you get a more accurate estimate here, because it's going to be wrong anyway. right? It's just the nature of the beast. It will be wrong, but it's the best of your knowledge, right? We need to write some test fixtures, code some full class, and update the performance tests. So the sprint. So think 1 week here, 1 iteration. And as I said before, the key is sustainable pace. And this is critical. Only commit to work that you can do. And you have no idea how big of a difference this makes. If you have a manager who tells you, or a product owner in this case maybe, who tells you, okay, in this next iteration, I would like for you to do this and this and that. And the team is just sitting there, their hearts are just sinking. There's just way too much. There's no way. There is no way we can do this. And guess what the result of that is? Is that whatever is being produced tends to become crappy, right? Because you're morally disillusioned. Because you know, I've been given an objective that is not achievable. So, screw it, you know. Where's my motivation now? If you have said, collectively as a team, that these are the things, based on what we know, these are the things we're going to do. We're committing to do these things in this week. Your commitment is completely different. Because you've signed up for it, right? And then you might think, oh, okay, if I sign up for things, then I might not sign up for anything at all. That's even better, right? Well, guess what? Then you're going to be out of the organization in a little while, right? Because it's a job, right? You're supposed to do things, right? But don't underestimate the importance of having decided yourself what you're gonna do in the next week. Nobody else has told you how much you're gonna do. They tell you what, and you select among the whats. Leave some on the other side. Don't commit to them. So I'm going to translate this now into our case here. So the sprint planning meeting is, if we have 4-week iterations, it's typically a day-long meeting, right? We're going to have 1-week iterations. So typically here, we're going to have 1-hour meetings. We're starting with 1.5, hopefully get down to 1 hour here. And there's an agreement, as I mentioned before, no distractions, no interference during the sprint. Agreement between the team and the product owner. This is an understood agreement, right? It doesn't need to be stated, right? No changes during the sprint. So we have some meeting in the beginning of the sprint planning meeting. Then the development happens. And at the end of the sprint, we have this review where you show what you've done. And then we take a step back and reflect on how did it go? Did it go okay? It's really, if you think about it, this is really a sign of humility from the founders of this, that they're saying that even the process is agile, right? Even how you do things, they leave open to the possibility that empirical data might modify how you do things. Right? So they're walking the talk here, right? They're not saying that this is how we communicate. Well, if it doesn't work, that's empirical data, then we pick another communication tool or whatever the reason was why communication didn't work. The daily scrums, the daily meeting. And this daily meeting for your teams, no teaching staff will attend those meetings. You need to have the meetings every day, not on weekends. If you decide not to have it on Friday, you can have it on Saturday, by all means. That's up to the team, right? Team might decide to work on a weekend. Doesn't matter to me, right? But the daily meeting needs to happen. It's supposed to be 15 minutes, and you really need to be anal about time boxing it, because there's so many things you want to talk about, and it's so easy for this meeting to, somebody says something, you know, I need somebody to help me with this, right? And somebody says, well, you know, exactly what is it that you need, and then you, in a design discussion, and an hour later, the rest of the team is just sitting there bored because they don't really care that much about the details of this particular implementation. Right? Don't waste people's time. Of course, you can sit down if you want, but the purpose of having this to be a stand-up meeting is not to be too comfortable, because we don't tend to want to stand for too long. Right? So be uncomfortable to get it over with. So it's not for problem solving. Anybody can come to this meeting. So in a regular situation, the product owner can come to this, can walk into this meeting and listen in. However, if they say a single thing without being asked, they should be sent out. Right? It's not their meeting. They have their meeting. That's the sprint planning meeting and the sprint review meeting. This is a team meeting. Right? But sometimes they're curious, right? They want to know what's going on. And that's okay. Let them be there. An executive might pop in sometimes and just listen in, see how things are going. So only team members and Scrum Master can talk. And this actually does help avoid other unnecessary meetings. You might think that Scrum, all these meetings, but the thing is that they're very short and very structured. Right? So it avoids the other meetings. In this meeting, in the daily Scrum meeting, 3 questions are asked. What did you do yesterday? Or rather, what did you do since the last daily meeting? What have you done? What will you do between now and the next daily meeting? Is anything in your way? Short answers to these 3 questions. And these are not status report to the Scrum Master. This is commitment to your team members, right? And communication to your team members. What's going on here? Scrum Master is just there orchestrating things, making sure that it works, the communication works. Now, at the end of the sprint, we have the sprint review meeting, where the team presents what they've accomplished in this sprint. And so we go looking at the user stories, the features that the team selected. We take one at a time, and the team demonstrates what they have done. Typically in form of a demo. Right? No slides. Sometimes it kind of, you want to show something that is not really part of the feature itself. Right? So you might it might be exemptions to this rule. Sometimes you want to show some document, a design document or something, right? But most of the time, the only thing the product owner cares about at the end of the day is there anything new in this product? Because if there's nothing new and you produce some documents, well, good for you. I don't really care. Right? Unless this results in product that I can sell, so I get a bigger bonus in the end, I don't care. You shouldn't prepare for this meeting more than half an hour. Half an hour preparation. The whole team participates, and you can invite the entire world. Anybody has the right to speak in this meeting. Anybody, an executive comes in and says, you know what, I never liked baby blue, so change the color. Then you tell them, you bring that up with the product owner, right? There's not something you care about. The product owner owns the color scheme for this product, whatever it is, right? Okay, now we've done the sprint review. Then comes the sprint retrospective. So you discuss. So it's about 15, 30 minutes. Everybody participates, and in this meeting, the team answers or discusses these 3 things. Is there anything we're not doing that we should start doing? Right? Anything. Maybe once a week we should start to actually meet in one room and work together, right? Instead of sitting in our dorm rooms, right? So let's try to start doing that. I might improve things, right? Is there anything we should stop doing? Right? Maybe we need to be more courteous to each other, or maybe we need to stop meeting in the morning. You know, it just doesn't work because some of these guys, as I said, you know, I don't want to know what you're doing. And is there anything we should continue to do? Right? Is there anything we started doing? This is working well. So this is actually, you know, when it comes to New Year's resolutions, this is better. Right? Don't make any New Year's resolutions. Give yourself the answer to these 3 questions instead. Right? Okay, so we started a sprint. We planned. We broke these features down into technical tasks. Then the team worked during the sprint, and we'll talk about during the sprint. Team worked during the sprint, and at the end we had the sprint review where we present to the product owner what we have done. And then we have a short retrospective and to see can we do better? Are we a well-oiled engine here that's just humming? Because that's what the product owner should think of their team. Kind of, I tend to think of them as their team, even though that used to be the case. Kind of the product folks were kind of above the engineering folks, but it's not the case anymore. But I was going to say, I lost my train of thought. I'm sure it was very important. If it was, I'll find it again. Okay, so now what do we see during a sprint? So again, the product backlog. It's this guy over here, right? The product backlog. And then some of these go into the sprint backlog, and then the sprint goes, and every day we have a daily meeting, and then at the end we have the sprint review and deliver stuff. Okay, so all the user stories, ideally, not all of them will be there, will be featured in this product backlog, expressed in such a way that we understand what the value is to the users and customers. Right? So it's not that we need to be able to sort this table of data on this column as well. That's not a valid user story, because the team needs to know why. So what are you hoping to accomplish by sorting this data? Because very often, the team, knowing the technology, might know a different way of accomplishing what the product owner wants to accomplish by sorting that table based on that column. So it's critical that it's expressed, that the team understands why. What is it that we're trying to accomplish here? Not just the feature, technical feature. And we'll get to this too. So this is the backlog is prioritized by product owner, and as I said, important to reprioritize prior to every sprint planning meeting. Here's some bad user stories as well. It's probably some hotel reservation system. So here is the product backlog. As a guest, I want to make a reservation. As a guest, I want to cancel a reservation. As a guest, I want to change the dates of a reservation, etc., etc. Story points here, by the way, are relative sizes. So this essentially says that the team here, and we'll get to this too, the team here has estimated that this story, to implement this story, is about the same as implement that story. It doesn't say anything about absolute values. It just says, in terms of effort, they feel about the same. Right? This one is almost twice as big. And this is more than twice as big as this. Rough estimates. Rough. As a customer, I should be able to browse through the flower collection in an easy way so that the buying experience is pleasant. Right? Clear. Who wants this feature? What is it? I'll be able to browse through the flower collection in an easy way. Why? Why is that important? Because this provides me with an easy way to providing with a way to have a pleasant buying experience. Some user stories, you have difficulties expressing the value to the customer. And here you have an example. As a developer, I should be able to test the code developed in an efficient way via a continuous integration server. That's typically what you see as a user story, technical user story. But here they've actually managed so that the customer gets quality product in the end. Right? This is not self-serving for the developer. The reason you want to do this, even though it's a technical thing, there's no feature, but the reason you want to do it to provide better quality to the client. I can skip. So now you have the sprint backlog, right, with all these technical tasks. Now, individuals take tasks from this backlog, right? Since you have a common objective, of course you try to pick the tasks that you are best positioned to carry out, right? You don't take a task that you have no idea how to do, because if that task doesn't get carried out, that feature doesn't get delivered, which means that the team fails to deliver that feature. Not you, the team fails to deliver that feature. So, of course, you use your skills, you take your skills into account when you pick tasks from the sprint backlog. So work is never assigned. So there's no features assigned by the product owner, and there is nobody assigning a technical task to you, ever. However, if it turns out that you don't take any tasks, then you're not bringing things forward at all, right? If you're not doing anything to contribute to the progress of this team, that's not okay, right? So the thing here is, there might be some of you who are, you have different strengths. Take advantage of these strengths in the teams. Since the teams are self-organized, you can do things whichever way you want. Take advantage of the strengths. There might be a sprint every now and then where there's really, you think there's nothing, we're using some technologies in this sprint to implement this particular feature, technologies which I don't master. What do I do? Right? There is no task that I'm capable of doing. Then what do? Well, you figure something out. Right? You know where you're going. Right? You know where the whole team is going. Clearly, you have enough cognitive ability to do something that brings the team further that way. You can ask somebody else, can I help you with testing? Right? Somebody who's implementing something, can I help you with testing? I can help you implement test cases. What can I do? Can I go get coffee? Right? Whatever it takes to, because you're in the same boat here, right? And you're not doing anything, it's just making it harder to move this ship forward. And you want the ship to be moved forward because you're benefiting from it moving forward as well, as is everybody around you. So it tends to be, almost like peer pressure in the end. And you're going to be looked down upon. You're going to get ugly looks if you're not pulling your weight. And you should. Right? And this is the way it is. If you're thrown into a team in a company, if there's some skills you lack, well, either you do something that makes your makes your peers feel that you're helpful somehow in what they're doing. Otherwise, it won't be long before you're out. Right? Cannot make coffee your entire life, but if it's a week when whatever it takes to pitch in. So you take a task from the product backlog. or from the sprint backlog, a technical task. You start to work on it. This technical task has an estimate from the beginning that you have given to it, right? Say that 4 hours or something, right? You start to work on this task. It gets late, and contrary to your fellow team members, you sleep at night, so you don't have time to finish this now, right? So you're going to stop working on it. At this point in time, you might have put in, say, 2 hours into this task, right? It started as a 4-hour estimate task. After 2 hours, after putting in 2 hours and logging out with the plan to continue tomorrow, you need to update the remaining hours on this task. How many hours it started with, irrelevant. Because you might have noticed after working 2 hours on this that, oh shoot, we forgot these aspects. So it turns out that what I had initially thought was 4 hours, I have now become much wiser working on it for 2 hours. So now I realize 6 hours left. So the first estimate was wrong, irrelevant. I want to see 6 hours there. At any point in time, if I sum up the remaining times, estimates for the tasks that are not done, that should, to the team's best understanding, reflect reality. I'm not interested in what happened in the past, because it's gone, right? I'm only interested in how to get to that goal. And what determines whether I can reach that goal or not is how much do I have left, not how much I've done. How much do I have left? So it's critical to always change. If you worked on a task, it's not finished. Update the number of hours left that you think, and don't sandbag it. Don't write 8 hours if you think it's 4, because it will only mess up the planning for the future, right? Nobody cares if you put in 8 hours when you think it's 4, and then you finish in 4 hours, and you pat yourself on the back and say, I did it in half the time. Well, nobody gives a shit. Really, it depends on how much is left, right? It's done. Any team member can modify the sprint backlog. And what this means is that you take on a task and you realize, well, wait a minute, these 5 tasks is not going to be enough to implement that feature. There's something we forgot about. So you add a new task. Again, don't worry about that it's not a reflection of that you did a bad planning and estimate in the beginning. What's important here is that, again, this needs to be done in order for us to do this feature, and we need to be aware of it for the future. So new work can emerge during the sprint. If it's too big an item, you break it down. And even if you don't do any work, if you learn something that makes you realize that that task is going to require more time, then you update it. As soon as you know something, again, and as accurate as it is, given today's information, how much is left. So the sprint backlog reflects reality as the team understands it. Might be an illusion, but it is what it is. It's what the team understands. So here we have a little sprint backlog. So on Monday, these were the estimates. After 1 day, turned out that we have no idea. So now it says that testing the middle tier was estimated to be 8 hours. Now it's estimated to be 16 hours. How much time has been put into this? No idea. Not interesting, right? They might have put in 8 hours already, or might not have put in any time at all. But that's the past, right? This is the future. This is what we care about. Don't forget the present, though. And so it continues. And now, this is a sprint burn down chart. So this is another artifact that's being extracted from the time estimates of the tasks, right? So this simply says that on 4/29, April 29, 2002, the total number of hours that the team has estimated remains for this sprint is like 760 hours or something like that. Might be a day later, yeah. A day later, clearly the team has done some work, but they have found new things, or some of the tasks they realized were bigger than they originally thought. So now we have 780 hours left, despite having put in time. And so this allows you, so clearly what you want here, in an ideal world, this is a straight line, right? A straight line from here to here. Right? So here it should be 0 and you're done. Everything is done. But for you, this is going to go like this. No? And it's going to get better and better and better, but at the beginning it's going to be total chaos. And so that's one thing that, you know, it's going to be a little bit messy, right? Because there's a little bit softer things around here. It's not really what you're used to. It's not a compiler telling you whether you're right or wrong. It's a little bit, it depends. Yeah, so this is just really another one of those. So advantages of Scrum here again, visibility, and now maybe it's more apparent to you. Visibility because we show things after every iteration. It's not a black hole where we start with the analysis and design and database schema and functional specs and all that come out at the other end. We're showing things all the time. So whoever is interested has insight into what's going on in this project. Product owner can change their minds between every sprint, before every sprint planning meeting. They can choose features that can generate business value earlier on. And since we can attack riskier tasks first, which is normally not done in waterfall processes. So risk is also reducing much faster. So this, never forget this. Nobody can tell you what to do, right? Or how much to do at least. Okay, so now what about, so Scrum is typically 5 to 9 people. What if you have a bigger organization? I mean, many small companies today they might not have more than 5 to 9 people, or at least 5 to 9 people are working on similar stuff. But if you remember the big ad serving system, for example, 300 engineers. 300 engineers, and to implement the feature might require 5 different teams, right? Well, so far, everything we talked about here has been within one team. We have a product owner, and here's one team. What if there are dependencies between these teams, so they're waiting for each other? Well, then what essentially you do is you are creating a scrum of scrums. And you can have any number of levels here. Obviously, you want to avoid this, right? This is just more hierarchy. But the idea here is that not everybody can talk to each other all the time. So you pick representatives from the individual teams who meet not every day, but maybe every 3 days or something to try to synchronize how the teams are working together. This is hard, though. This is very hard. So as I said, so I was responsible for implementing something like this, double-click and then Google. And why did we do it? Well, one thing, projects were always running late, right? As kind of attested to by this study I mentioned earlier, or yesterday. So product management was never happy. Engineering was never happy because product management wasn't happy, right? Tension between these two organizations. Product management wants more. Engineering wants to do things right. And so they say no, and the product management, goes to daddy and complains, and then daddy tells the engineering organization you need to do this. So total mess, right? So to create this tension. And I was at the meeting. We were at one point were acquired and taken private, right? A private equity company. That's what they do. They buy companies and then chop them up, sell off pieces, and they might keep a few of them and groom them and then sell them off at an even higher price later on. Right? So we were owned by a private equity company, not publicly traded anymore. We were publicly traded first, and we were taken off the public market. Right? And so I was in this meeting with my boss, with our owners, right, the private equity folks. And one of those guys asked my boss, he said, "So Greg," he says, "how's it going? How is your organization doing? Is it producing?" He said, yeah. And the guy says, "How do you know? How do you know where you are relative to your capacity? How do you know you cannot deliver twice as much as you're delivering?" I mean, how do you compare? How do you figure that out? Am I doing well? I feel that I'm doing well. Well, I don't know. Can you compare yourself to other companies? I mean, it's really, really difficult to somehow quantify your own performance, because it's just too many dimensions to consider beside the financial results, which is in the end that's what it's about. But they could be dependent on so many other things that you have no control over whatsoever. It could be market conditions, or your competitor has maybe they came later to the game, so they have a newer, more modern technology stack, so they can actually crank shit out faster than what you can do. He had no idea, right? So that's what led us to actually implement Scrum. And what it did was that it allowed us to compare ourselves against ourselves. So we could see, we can't have absolute comparisons with other organizations. However, we can kind of baseline ourselves and then see how we improve relative to this baseline. Right? And at the end of the day, that's the best all of us can do. Right? We've been, again, gifted with this fantastic physical container, right? But it is what it is. And now we can only do the best we can do with what we have, right? I can't be taller. Sorry, that's not one of the things I can do, right? So we're trying to kind of maximize, optimize the benefits that we get out of the capabilities that we have. Be it our cognitive ability, our ability to run fast, ability to sing, or simply just look fabulous, or whatever it is that allows you to maximize the potential that you have, and find out what the talent is, and then use that talent. It's so much easier if you find it. Use the talent you have. Don't try to shoehorn yourself into something that you're not. Right? Okay, 2 o'clock. So let's 10 minutes, okay? 10-minute break. We're live again. So, okay, so say you know an organization which is kind of form of technology organization, company, and the typically since this agile way of doing things originated from software development, the first ones in an organization to adopt that way of working tends to be the engineering organization, right? Because they were kind of the perpetrators, right, in the first place. They were the ones who messed things up. Right? Okay, so the development organization goes agile, right? We're agile, which means that they're efficient. They can deliver things on a say weekly or even daily or hourly basis, whatever it is. Okay, now marketing says, well, this is great, but we need to know the complete feature set and delivery date up front so we can plan. Well, says the engineering organization, that's not how we work. Right? It depends on what the product owner is prioritizing and what they want in the release. We can't promise you. Well, then how are we going to be able to kind of plan for our time? How do I know how much money I need? How do I know when I need those 2 million euros for a marketing campaign for this new product? How do I know that? Well, we can't tell you that. Well, then I can't work. Right? The operations department responsible for keeping these things up and running and launching, keeping it up and running. They say, we release according to our schedule, We don't want you to release product features here every week. What about us? I need to sleep at night too, You cannot just roll out things that break and then I get phone calls because I'm on call. That's not working for us. The customer, we talked about that a little bit earlier, the customer wants fixed date, fixed budget, and scope. Well, that's not how we work. Well, then the customer said, well, we can't work with you then. Yeah, you might have development partners out there. They say, we do things our way. Has always worked before. You do things your way, and we do things our way, and then we deliver when it's time to deliver. Well, it's that we know. That's not how it works anymore. Right? So my point here is that this agility and kind of almost lucidness of the development of the product development organization is trickling out to the entire organization. Everybody needs to change how they do their things. Long gone are the days with the 5-year plans or three-year plans. Right? There was some company actually that stopped with budgets in Sweden. I think it was the SEB, one of our biggest banks. They stopped budgets completely. Right? And they did that sometime in the 80s or something like that. So there are different ways of running an organization. But this, when it comes to kind of agile, there is something called kind of the agile enterprise. So an agile enterprise, and you can think of one agile enterprise that you're aware of, I would argue, is Google, right? Extremely sensitive to what's going on out there. Something happens, it doesn't take them long to do something in that space. So they have both capabilities within the organization and the appropriate freedom and structure within the organization to to both, and this is what Google is doing, right? To milk the cash cow, right? Paid search and also to some extent other types of advertising, to milk the cash cow while you explore new opportunities. Right? And a common mistake today, that's happening today, is that companies keep milking for too long. Right? They start the new thing, the next thing, too late. And so somebody comes in and just cuts them by the ankles. They're gone. If you look at average lifetime on the Fortune 500, which is the 500 biggest companies, I don't know, in the US or in the world, right? If you look at statistics on the lifetime on that, the lifetime has plummeted. Gone are the days when the big giants of yesterday are still going to be the big giants tomorrow. There are very few companies, and you've seen many who have missed the boat, right? You've seen, like, the most common example is like Kodak, right? Completely missed the boat. Blockbuster is another one, which is a video rental service in the US. Next, Netflix came, they didn't react, right? They had no response, so they just died, right? Some companies like IBM has done a good thing. IBM, 30 years ago, IBM was a hardware company, primarily a hardware company. Then they started with software products for this hardware. Now IBM is primarily a consulting company. They have reinvented themselves completely. And these new technologies make new business models so easy to come up with. I shouldn't say easy, but common that they're coming up with. Like Uber, for example. I mean, who would have guessed? Or Airbnb, right? They're just killing the old dinosaurs, right? And, as I said before, the old dinosaurs tend not to explore new revenue streams, new business models, until it's too late. They essentially, when things are going really well, that's when you need to start to get worried, right? Because you get a little bit complacent and comfortable, right? Oh, it's just gliding along here and generating revenue. And then you're completely missing the disruptors, right? Who comes at the game, at the same market, from a completely different angle. They don't have your high fixed costs. They combine services to do something that is what you do, and you spent all this time, and now you have an infrastructure, technical infrastructure, that is so rigid so that you can't change it anymore. Right? You toast. So that is business today. Right? It's interesting and scary as hell for people who are in business. Which is both like opportunities. The opportunities and threats are so much larger today than what they were even 10 years ago. It's a wonderful time to be alive. Okay, so we need to move on. There's plenty of resources here. When it comes to Scrum, I posted a Scrum guide. I don't know how long it is, 40, 50 pages or something, that you can consult. It should have all the important stuff in it. So it's not, because there's no literature on Scrum in this course, other than that. Okay, so now we're moving on to the last piece here. Before we get to the project stuff, always I pick full screen because I want to see it on the full screen, but that's not that full screen. It's the presenter view full screen I want. I make the mistake essentially every second time. It's like old dogs. So going to talk a little bit about planning. How do you, because you cannot not plan. Talk about planning a little bit, about user stories, because that's going to be central in the project. story points, velocity, meaning speed, pace of a team, and estimation. So I'll go through this fast, to save some time for questions and stuff. So there's essentially 5 levels of planning. It's like the most strategic one, which is kind of the vision for the product. And this typically happens like annually. They might revisit these kind of things. Then you have some kind of roadmap for the product, and that's typically, these are just average, kind of, twice a year they meet and modify and revisit the product roadmap. Release plan is kind of thinking for the next release of the product, right? And that's typically around quarterly. And then you have, for you guys, it's going to be a weekly iteration planning, right? That's when you plan the next iteration, the next sprint. And then you have the daily. And so it goes from strategic to tactical. There's nothing strange there. So product vision, essentially the questions you're asking are, what are you trying to accomplish and how is it going to benefit the business? Kind of similar to the initiation phase of the traditional methodology. Product roadmap, say you have high-level themes. Could be like, well, you know, in the next release we might introduce a social component, social functionality around the content or whatever it is that this business is publishing. That could be that level, kind of. Lots of wiggle room here, right? Very rough. And then you have the release plans, the next level of details. Themes are kind of big user stories, but not huge, right? So here, we want to make sure everybody is on the infamous same page. Get some understanding what can possibly be in this release. You balance loads, you might have different teams, you might balance those. And you're projecting, essentially, what's going to be in the next release. There's no commitment from anybody. We're just projecting it. And then after a few iterations, you do this after a few iterations once you are up to speed, so you know kind of how things are going. And then we said we had the iteration plan, the sprint planning meeting. And this is important. Spend just enough time so every meeting in Scrum is time boxed. Right? So, and the idea is to avoid analysis paralysis, right? Avoid too much analysis so that you analyze instead of doing things. And also, if you analyze too much, you might actually end up analyzing stuff that's not going to be relevant, right? So you say, we time box the amount of time that we have to create an understanding of how we're going to do what's being asked from us to do. Right? Knowing that it's not perfect. Right? But remember, we're embracing change, right? There will be change later on. So for me to spend an additional half an hour to get a more accurate estimate on this is wasted time, because chances are it's going to be wrong anyway. It's just a little bit less wrong. Right? And then we have this, which we've seen before. So we have the product backlog, which the team uses at the sprint planning meeting to create the sprint backlog. These backlog items broken down into tasks, the technical tasks. The sprint starts, meeting every 24 hours after a week for you. We're going to demo in the review meeting, and then we have a retrospective, and then we go back and start again. So product backlog. So it should be organized in order of priority, with the highest priority item first. And at the top of this are now user stories that the product owner feels that these are the most important ones. Right? So these are the most fine-grained. Right? These are the ones that are spelled out the most. Right? If, say that there is an epic, a big user story, which says, for example, and as I said before, let's introduce a social component to the service that we're offering. Well, there's no way that the team is going to know what to do if that's what it says, a social component, right? And if the team is not going to do it in this sprint, they don't have to understand it, they don't need to understand it fully until they need to deal with it, right? So the further down you go here, typically the bigger are the stories and the less specificity around the story. But these up here needs to be pretty succinct, right? The product owner needs to know exactly what they want, because the team is going to ask them at the sprint planning meeting, what do you mean by that? Exactly what do you mean by that? So user stories. So communicating requirements is a problem. Communication as such is a big problem. So there are those who want to communicate something to those who are going to build it. So the product owner says, this is not what I wanted. Who told you that these are our requirements? Well, sir, you did. Really? I said that these were requirements? Well, then whoever was taking notes was not hearing me correctly. Right? So you need a way to capture these requirements. And here's this very, most of you must have seen this, right? Yeah, okay, so we don't need to do this. So what is a user story? It's a simple, brief description of functionality told from the perspective of a user or a customer. And this is the format. As who, I want what, so that why. A use case is something entirely different. Use case is a description of a set of interactions between a system and a set of actors. Right? Very different from a user story. So user stories are about needs, and use cases are about behavior of a system. Right? User stories are faster to produce and can be written by product folks, because they don't understand the technical things, right, which are required to write good use cases. They're used for planning and estimation. They're not a sequence of actions. They contain acceptance criteria, which we'll get to. And they're not meant to document every aspect, but rely on collaboration. So it's not complete. It's not exhaustive. And can be coded and tested in one sprint. That's a user story. So good user stories are, it's always an acronym somewhere, independent, so they can be, it's easier to plan if you don't have dependencies. Negotiable, so details can be added via collaboration, added or removed by collaboration. They're valuable, they provide some value to the customer. You can actually estimate them, not too vague. They're so small they can be done in less than a week. And they're testable, meaning you know you're going to get acceptance criteria from the product owner so that you know when you're done. Right? Otherwise, how do you know when you're done? How do I know I'm going to need to take care of these edge cases? Right? Well, it needs to be specified. Some good user stories. So the context here is the video sharing sites. As a creator, I want to upload a video from my local machine so that any user can view it. Specifying who I am, right? Because you have other users in the system. You have administrators. You have regular end users who are not creating anything. Specifying who is this for? It's the creator who needs something here. The creator needs to be able to upload a video. Why? Well, because the creator wants somebody else to. The creator wants a dopamine trip. That's why, at the end of the day. Since they can make money from it, at least dopamine. Satisfied with that. So user story essentially is not an acronym, 3 C's. There's a card. It doesn't necessarily have to be a physical card, but often teams use cards, which is the actual story, right? It's written on a card. Then there's a conversation. Based on the story, there's this conversation between the team and the product owner. What do you actually mean by this? You know, let's flesh out some details here so we know. You know, do you want this to happen on 2 screens or 1 screen? What do you want here? And there's some form of acceptance, confirmation, acceptance criteria to know when it's finished. And the acceptance criteria are also expressed in simple language. So you're actually making it possible for those product folks to actually do a little bit of work for us, right? Normally they just tell us what to do. Well, you know, we're giving them a tool here, then you just express it in your natural language. It's okay. So example here, the card, as a creator, I want to upload a video of my local machines that any user can view it. The conversation with the product owner results in that the upload button should be present on every page of the site, not stated in the story. You want to keep this clean, clear, right? Videos might not be larger than a certain size or longer than 10 minutes, support certain file formats, and we need to show some progress bar. Yeah, we know how accurate that is, right? The progress bar. Still, we look at it, don't we? I mean, I do at least, and think, oh, almost done. And then I turn away and I look back, and it's still almost done. Oh, wait a minute, it's not moving. This false sense, again, this false sense of security, right? It's predictability, right? Love that illusion. It's basking in it. Confirmation, so acceptance criteria. Well, here is kind of a test case, right? I'll click the upload button, specify which video to upload, make sure that only those files are supported, make sure that no other formats, that it's not too big, click upload video, and check that the progress is displayed in real time. A little bit simple, but I think it kind of communicates the point. Some bad user stories. As a user, I want to be able to manage ads so that I can remove expired and erroneous ads. Why is that bad? So the context here is clearly some form of ad management company, right? Why is that a bad story? As a what? As a user? What user? Am I the CEO of this advertising company? Or am I somebody who's working in ad operations, a clerk in ad operations? Who am I? Right? Do I need to have access to reports related to this? You need to specify who it is for, right? Because all of a sudden, if the team knows who it's for, they have a much better idea what to build. If you don't know who's going to use it, it's kind of shaky. As a developer, I want to improve error logging. Well, you know, that's clear what I'm specifying who it is and what, but why? Why? As a product owner, I want this product to kick ass. Don't need to say anything about that. All connections to the database go through a connection pool. Well, you know, okay. So look at this one. Well, there's no who and no why, right? So if you were to rewrite this, try to rewrite this, we would probably write something like, as a developer, I would like for all connections to go through a connection pool in order to save resources on the server, which will improve the efficiency of the system, the performance of the system. Right? Now we know why. Sometimes, though, it will feel a little as you're shoehorning things, right? A technical story. Okay, this is really only I care about this, but I need to somehow give the impression that it's good for some customers somehow. So, you cannot be too rigid about it. As a conference acceptance criteria, as a conference attendee, I want to register online so it's fast and I cut down on paperwork. Fine. Acceptance criteria for this. User cannot submit the form without complete. So this comes out of conversation with the product owner, or the product owner has put this in already. As a user cannot submit without completing mandatory fields. Needs to be stored and persistent in a registration database. Credit card payments should be supported, and some emails should be sent out afterwards. Another one, as a user of the library catalog, I want advanced search options on the front page so that I can quickly and easily refine my search. And here you have some acceptance criteria for that. Now, since we're specifying who the user is, every user, or who the beneficiary is of every user story, it's good to have an idea who these users are, right? I mean, the best is if you know somebody, that kind of user, then you know kind of what makes them tick, right? Because users, you might have different types of users. That you have some novice users and some power users. Right? How do you develop both power users and this is really this is one challenge that I think as a software community hasn't really gotten there yet, if it's possible at all, to accommodate for different types of users in the same application. Right? Microsoft Word is pretty good that way. You know, if you don't use that 95% functionality, the fancy functionality, it's kind of hidden from you, so you can just use the simple functionality. So it works for a novice, and it also tends to work pretty well for a power user of it. But most applications you end up using, kind of assuming that it's one type of user. So you need to kind of, it might depend how you do things, might depend on their level of expertise or their proficiency with computers, you know? Or their proficiency with this particular application. Why are they using this system? So typically what one does to make things a little bit more real is that you create personas. And oftentimes these personas, they're created and posted everywhere in the offices, right? So when you're thinking about something, you're doing something, you look up and you see, yeah, it's cold in Birmingham in the winter, right? So, or maybe, wait a minute, he smokes hand-rolled cigarettes, which means that every now and then he steps out. Okay, that means that the session cannot expire too quickly, right? Little things like that. I mean, you might ask yourself the question, who cares if he smokes hand-rolled cigarettes? Well, I just told you why you should care. Right? You might be able to provide a better service to him if you take into account that this is a smoker, hand-rolled cigarette smoker, nonetheless. Prefers home cooking rather than fast food, you know. I mean, I don't smoke anymore. When I smoke, I hand roll my cigarettes. It really is like home cooking versus fast food. That dry stuff is nasty. I'm not saying the other stuff is good. And he loves his little dog, so he also needs to go takes his dog for a walk every now and then, right? I mean, it's funny, but it's valuable. I'm so gonna run out of time. All right, you just have to do it. Story points. Okay, so I said that story points are relative estimates. So what this says that, so as an HR manager, I want to publish new vacancies so that I can find candidates. Forget about this column here. This column says, okay, so the estimate is 20. Well, 20 doesn't mean anything. It's just a number, 20. It doesn't mean anything unless you have another number and relate to it, right? So the second story here says, as a job hunter, I want to apply for a job so that I can quickly apply for a job. Well, yeah, right? And this has an estimate of 40. And what this means is that the team has said that if this is a 20, just give any story a 20, whatever it is, right? If this is a 20, then the team, when they look at what does it take to do this, like roughly, we need to change these things, we need to change database server, whatever it is that we need to change, right? So we have some understanding of the size of that job, the effort necessary to pull off this story, right? Now, when we look at this story, we estimate that it's about twice as much work that needs to be done. About. So we give it a 40. Right? For now, that's fine. Give it a 40. So this says that this is twice as much. We think that this is going to take twice as much effort as this one. Not talking about time, effort. Because time is fleeing. Right? Never catch it. But time is so subjective. It's an interesting question whether it exists at all, right? It's not controversial today, by the way, to say that time is likely to be an invention by human beings. Feels a little bit weird, but we have no evidence that it exists. But it certainly makes it easier to navigate around this, to walk around in our fantastic physical containers in this wondrous earth, right? Okay, so how do you get to story points to start with? Well, you've done a sprint or two, right? We're not going to deal with story points the first sprint, for sure. You've done a sprint, and now you look at what you've done in the sprint, and you pick a medium-sized story in terms of how much effort. Say that you have 3 features that you implemented in the sprint, and so you take the one in the middle in terms of how much effort was put in towards implementing that, and you give it a 5. Now you take all other stories and estimate those stories relative to the story A that you gave a 5. Right? So it might be that one team takes this story A and gives it an 8, and now estimates everything relative to that 8. Another team takes this story A and gives it a 5, and now estimates everything relative to this 5. So you cannot compare different teams because they have different yardsticks, right? It's different. Right? So the question is, you look at another story, story B, and you're asking yourself, is it about the same as story A? Based on your understanding? Individual understanding right now. Or is it about half? Or maybe it's twice as difficult? And then so you give it a story point number based on that. You're going to use the Fibonacci numbers except 20, which is not a Fibonacci number. And if a story is too big, then you split it up. So why do we use story points instead of time to estimate things? Well, time estimates tend to vary by person much more than story point estimates. Time estimates encourage padding, right? You know, I think it's going to take 2 hours, but let me say 4 just to be on the safe side. Well, guess what happens when everybody pads like that, right? You're going to get wrong estimates. You're going to get estimates that are not consistent with your understanding, right? Nobody is going to blame you for giving a wrong estimate, right? Estimate is for the future. We come back later and see, whoa, we estimated this story to be a 5. It turns out that, you know, it probably should have been like a 13. Well, great, you learned something. In general, the past is not a life sentence. The past is a source of information. Right? Use it as such, you know. So story points estimate tend to be, and this is just studies showing that, more consistent from person to person. They don't provide a commitment to a time frame. It makes it easier to give it. It makes it easier to be sincere in this situation. And I'm not saying that people are malicious or consciously gaming these kind of things, but it's human nature, right? It turns out to be easier to be sincere if we're not committing to a time frame. It's just the way it is. And it's Hungary. I don't know nobody there. Okay, so how do you get to story point estimates? Well, each player you play planning poker. Each player gets cards. You create your own cards. I'm not going to do that for you. Just pieces of paper. You got cut out pieces of paper with these numbers on them. Pretty big numbers so you can see them, right? You're going to hold them up like this. Then what happens is that, so this is in the beginning, typically in the beginning of the sprint planning meeting, right? We discuss the user story with the product owner to make sure that everybody understands what it entails, what it is, right? So at most 5 minutes understanding this, right? Now, then all players give their estimate by showing their cards simultaneously, right? At the same time. Players with outliers explain their estimates. And after somebody has explained, say that if somebody gives this story a 2 and somebody else gives it an 8, right? And most of the other ones are say 3s, right? Now you're going to ask the person who gave it an 8. So why do you think it's an 8? This is not, you're not putting somebody on the spot here. Just why do you think it's an 8, right? And this person might say, well, you know, we need to make these modifications, and this looks really tricky to me. And when the rest of the team hears that, they might realize that, you know, we didn't think about this. Because this guy is actually a deeper expertise in this particular area. So now that I know that, we go again. Right? Okay, let's vote again. Now that we all have more information, what is your new estimate now? Right? Or somebody, it might be that the outlier is a 1 or something, and you ask them, so why do you think this is so simple? So, yeah, we just need to hook up to that API. And the rest of them says, oh shit, we didn't know that. Great. And then they play again, and now it's a 1 for everybody. Right? So why planning poker? You get multiple expert opinions. Right? Dialogues result in more accurate estimates. And studies are showing that this leads to better results. And also, it's kind of fun to do it. Okay, now, velocity. The velocity is the number of story points that a team is pulling off per sprint, per iteration. Right? So you pick a number of stories. They have story points associated with them. If you manage to pull those off, then that's the number of story points that you pulled off for that sprint. Right? Now imagine doing this the next sprint again, and the next sprint again, and the next sprint again. Your estimates are going to get better and better in general. Right? And you're going to start to see a pattern. You're going to see, you know, it seems like our capacity of this team is around 15 story points. Right? So, for the next sprint, when we are now planning, it would be suicidal to take on 25 story points. Because that's way above the capacity. We're setting ourselves up for failure. So it becomes a tool for planning how much work you can commit to for the next iteration. And it's going to look like this in the beginning for you, because yeah, just the way it is. And also, as I pointed out before, the numbers here are going to vary from team to team, because you have a different yardstick, right? Starting from different points. It's all relative to something that you pick as a team, and another team picks something completely different to relate things to. You cannot compare teams here. Okay, so what else can you do with story points? Well, it's both, so you're doing it for sprint planning, as I just said. What about release planning? You know, this is a product owner, you know, he really should be smiling, because, you know, there's this saying, right? If you smile, the whole world smiles at you, and it's so true. It is contagious. So, you know, the best thing you can do is just smile at the people. So he's going to ask, so how much will be done by June 30th, or when can we ship this set of features? So how do you respond to the product owner? Well, the tools that you have are a team velocity and a prioritized backlog. And the duration, how much longer will this take, is simply the sum of the number of story points on the product backlog divided by the velocity of this team. That there you get the number of iterations left. Right? And of course, you don't have precise estimates, but if you have a velocity of 9 story points, then, and if this is the product backlog, well, then you can see that you should be able to do about these 6 stories in 2 sprints, and then the product manager owner might say, okay, this is worth it. This is enough meat for a release, right? So I'm planning a release after 2 more iterations, and then it turns out that you need 3 more iterations to pull off the next set of features here. But you could also kind of have best case and worst case scenarios here. If you have a capacity of a velocity of 9 was in this case, you can also say that, well, you know, maybe we have a little bit more capacity. So in the best case, we're going to be able to do not just these 3, but actually this story as well. So you give kind of a range for the product owner, and then it's up to the product owner to make a decision what to release when. So to summarize, 5 levels of planning, user stories and acceptance criteria. We had the invest and the 3 C's. Talked about story points, how we use it for planning, and estimation and team velocity. And that is all I have when it comes to my presentation. So now we need to do some housekeeping stuff. So tomorrow and Friday, I will be product owner for half of the teams. Sebastian Höhnel, who is a German PhD student, quite experienced, will take the other half of the teams, and I will probably take Thursday, and he will take Friday. So we will be product owners here, right? You are the team. Scrum Master, you will have to take care of, right? So I'm going to ask you tomorrow, when we meet, to assign somebody on the team to act in the role of Scrum Master, right? And in order to get some continuity, I think we're going to have the same Scrum Master maybe for, I don't know how many sprints we have, probably 6 or something like that. So the same Scrum Master for first 3 sprints, and then we switch so that we get 2 different people. And when you pick a Scrum Master, when a team assigns the Scrum Master role to somebody, Scrum Master is not a boss, right? Scrum Master is there to make sure that the process works. Scrum Master needs to be should be the organized type, right? Should not be somebody who's scatterbrained and is not keeping track of things, right? So keep that in mind, and I will let you, the team, decide who's going to be the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master might also do some development, obviously, because this is not that much work to do here. But the Scrum Master is the one who has the role in the daily Scrum meeting, for example, that makes sure that happens. Takes attendance. All meetings, we're going to take attendance. Right? We will have some time to talk about this when we meet the individual teams. Speaking of attendance and expectation management, I spoke to somebody about this before. Right? Now, as I said, all meetings are mandatory. But I know that the world doesn't grind to a halt while we finish this course, right? that you do exist in a context. You might have had scheduled trips and booked flights before. You might have dentist appointments or surgeries or sickly parents or whatever it is, or a dog that needs to be dealt with, or you have a flat tire on the bike, or you need to go to the hospital because you hurt yourself or something. So I understand, right? Life happens. While this course is happening, life is going to happen, right? So there will be times when some of you will not be able to attend a meeting. Here's the kicker, though. If you cannot attend a meeting, you notify somebody who will be in that meeting that you won't be there. Think especially about the 15-minute meetings, right? 8 out of 9 people are sitting in the room. We don't know if the next one is coming or not. It's disrespectful of your fellow peers' time not to manage their expectations regarding your presence in a meeting. Okay? And you notify the Scrum Master of this, right? So the Scrum Master should sit on this information that we can start because he told me that, bike broke or no gas in the car, or whatever pathetic excuse it is. But it needs to be a valid, a reasonable excuse, right? Sleeping in is not a valid excuse. Well, unless something particularly enticing happened the night before that's preventing you from sleeping. I don't know. Right now. All I'm saying is that I understand that we cannot be too rigid about it. But please, if you don't show up for a meeting and you haven't notified anybody, you will get a warning. Right? And 2 warnings, as I wrote, you're out. Think of the first warning as you failed the first exam. Second warning, failed, gone. Right? And I have to be anal about this. I'm sorry. It has to be the case. Right? And it's for your peers' sake. I don't care. Who do I care? Right? But you're here to learn something, and if you're not participating, and this course, as opposed to many other courses where you're supposed to learn a lot of material, here you're learning how to work in a group setting. So this is about much more than technology. Right? It's actually interacting with other people. The team decides how you want to communicate. Right? The team decides when do you want to have your daily Scrum meetings. You can have them different times every day if you want to. I don't care, as long as they do happen. So you have a lot of freedom here. Finally, we would like to know, or some would like to know, who is in which team. So I would almost suggest that the teams, because we have some people here who have no idea who their fellow peers are, right? So I would suggest that, can you congregate in like 8 different places in this room so you can get a face on the name that's on that list? Right, so, okay, so anybody, which team are you in? 3? Okay, so team 5 here. Team 5 here. Is this too difficult? Wait, to make it easy here. Team 1 here, team 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So